It began with a controlled burn that wasn't in the schedule. October 3, 1992. A manila envelope marked with the initials GV33 was logged into the Federal Archive Room at the J. Edgar Hoover Building in Washington, D.C. Less than 72 hours later, the envelope and the sub-basement room in which it was stored was incinerated in what internal reports called a localized fire due to electrical fault. No alarms, no sprinklers, no paper trail that matched the inventory logs. The walls were charred, the metal shelves melted inward, and nothing remained but twisted nails and silence. It should have ended there. A routine bureaucratic failure. But 5 months later, a former intern named Maggie LaRoche contacted the Arizona Republic, claiming she had seen one of the missing files. Not heard of, not speculated about, seen. She described it in unsettling detail. A typed field report with faded photographs attached, showing what looked like a military tent deep in the Grand Canyon, surrounded by armed men in suits. No insignia, no names. In the center of one image, a tall black panel suspended in midair. No rigging, no wires, just floating. 2 days after Maggie's call to the paper, she was found dead in her Tempe apartment. The cause was ruled as accidental gas inhalation from a faulty stove. Her landlord later told Channel 9 News he had replaced that stove the week before. The news segment never aired. This was the first ripple, barely a tremor. But for the few who had spent decades chasing rumors about what insiders once referred to as Project Seraphim, Maggie's death was not a warning. It was confirmation. Over the next decade, pieces of something larger began to surface. Former rangers in the Kaibab National Forest started whispering about fenced-off sectors that didn't show up on any federal map. An anonymous letter sent to a post office box run by a conspiracy zine in Colorado Springs claimed that between 1984 and 1991, at least 7 civilians had gone missing near Marble Canyon. All were reportedly last seen near a defunct weather monitoring station, coordinates redacted. Then came the audio, a 12-minute reel-to-reel tape labeled OPGLV6, leaked by a supposed NSA tech in 2003. No one claimed ownership of it and no major outlet touched it, but those who heard it online never forgot. The tape begins with static, broken by the sound of wind and a distorted male voice. Subject is in place. No contact for over 2 hours. Object still resonating. A pause. Then another voice. You think it's watching? We don't know what it does yet. More wind. Then something else. Something not like wind. A metallic groan, stretching for 6 seconds, followed by absolute silence. Then a single word, whispered by someone who sounded like they were sitting in the room with you. Run. That whisper marked the tape's abrupt end. No timestamps, no context. But to those who followed the trail, it was enough. Enough to look deeper. Enough to start asking who the original object was, what room it had been moved to, and who had stood inside it. In 2006, a former FBI archivist named R. Holloway went on the record in a now-buried interview published briefly on a fringe radio site before being deleted. He spoke with a raspy, careful voice, constantly clearing his throat. They didn't just burn the files, he said. They erased the people who had written them. I don't even know if I'm real anymore. What followed was even stranger. A series of unclassified geological reports from 1985 to 1990, documenting unexplained magnetic distortions in a specific quadrant of the canyon. These distortions affected compasses, shortwave radios, and in one case, even caused temporary seizures in park surveyors. The reports were real, signed, stamped, filed, then marked for review and destruction in 1993, the same year the Glass Veil files were said to have vanished. But the question that lingered behind every memo, Every buried report, every whispered death was always the same. Why burn the files? Who was trying to forget? And who, or what, was inside that room? The deeper we looked, the more the answers pulled away, like smoke behind glass. The pattern was clear: disappearances, data loss, and a growing reluctance by federal officials to even acknowledge the term glass veil. FOIA requests returned blank, press inquiries redirected, and whenever someone got too close, like the independent researcher who published a 200-page PDF compiling every known reference to OPGLV, they either went silent or they changed their minds in public forums, discrediting their own work with bizarre confessions or incoherent ramblings. In one now-deleted YouTube stream from 2014, a man calling himself Agent Silas said, "There was something behind it, not a person, not a nation, a pattern. You'll never understand until you stand next to it." Then the stream cut out mid-sentence. His account was terminated within 12 hours. As far as official records go, Operation Glass Veil does not exist. No paper, no microfilm, no digital trail. But the shadows it left behind are real. And in those shadows, something is still moving. Something that may have been waiting for us to look away. They say the human mind fills in blanks with stories. But what if the blanks are deliberate? What if the gaps were made to erase something, not just from memory, but from the record of reality itself? In early 1991, 6 months before the so-called Glass Veil fire, a private pilot named Calvin Mercer filed an unusual incident report with the FAA. Mercer was flying a routine charter route over northern Arizona when he claimed his navigation instruments spiked and dropped without warning. For nearly 4 minutes, his altimeter spun uncontrollably, and his radio received a burst of noise he described as metal scraping against bone. That's the phrase he used, bone. The tape of the transmission was later seized by federal agents citing national security interests. Mercer, after repeated follow-ups, was informed he had experienced a standard atmospheric anomaly and advised not to speak further on the matter. Within a year, his pilot's license was revoked due to psychological instability. He vanished in 1995, and yet, tucked within a declassified 1990 Bureau of Land Management memo, one never intended for public eyes, there was a line referencing a preliminary containment grid near Havasupai land, stating, "Operation GV underway. All airspace above Zone 6C to remain black during active phase." No one talks about Zone 6C. What's more, in March 1990, a repair crew from the Arizona Public Service Utility Company was dispatched to investigate a voltage failure at a remote monitoring station deep in the canyon. Only one of the 3-man team returned. His name was Joel Anderson, and his statement, obtained through a former lawyer and never officially entered into court record, described the event as follows. "We went down just before dawn. It was quiet, real quiet. Then we reached the station and saw the hatch open. It shouldn't have been. The other 2 went inside. I stayed back to radio in. Then I heard it. This high-pitched hum, like static, but alive, like it was thinking. The walls started shaking. They didn't come out." Anderson was placed on involuntary psychiatric hold 2 days later. He died in a VA hospital in 1998 from what was listed as neurovascular collapse. No public autopsy, no next of kin. But the story doesn't end with government silence. In 2009, a set of anonymously posted photos appeared on a survivalist forum frequented by ex-military personnel. The images, which were quickly scrubbed from the internet, depicted what appeared to be a scorched campsite, sleeping bags, cooking gear, and a single steel tablet embedded in the earth. The most disturbing image was the last. It showed a blurred humanoid figure standing at the edge of a cliff, facing the photographer, with its arms impossibly long and its face washed out in a smear of static. The thread was locked, and the uploader's account was deleted within hours. But one comment remained before the purge. It read, "I was there in '89. It wasn't a creature. It was a mirror. We saw ourselves, but we weren't us." The theme of reflection, of distorted copies, keeps returning. In more than a dozen fringe accounts linked to the Glass Veil timeline, individuals report seeing doubles of themselves in dreams, in windows, in places they shouldn't be. One ranger's journal from 1992 describes waking up in the middle of the night at his canyon outpost to find a second version of himself sitting on the edge of the cot, silent, unmoving, staring back. He never returned to duty. The deeper we go, the more the veil frays. And then there's the room. References to the room appear sporadically in what few documents survive the fire. Not a storage room, not a server room, just the room. Described in fragments. The resonance is strongest in the southern wall. Subjects experience acute vertigo at threshold. Mirrored surface with internal heat despite no visible light source. No reflection visible from within. Who entered the room? Why? And what did they bring back? If they came back at all. One account from an unnamed naval intelligence officer, disclosed during a podcast interview before he recanted and deleted all online presence, claimed he was stationed at a joint operations center in Nevada during the 1987 test of an anomalous chamber acquired via GV. He recalled seeing live telemetry data that showed a human operator's vitals flatline for 18 minutes, only to return spontaneously as if nothing had happened. But his voice had changed. His fingerprints had changed. The man's own wife reportedly didn't recognize him. The term used on the internal logs was not death. It was replacement event. What does that mean? Is that what the files were burned to hide? As more former employees come forward in fragments, patterns emerge, files that refer not just to an operation, but to an entity, something not observed, but induced, not contacted, but generated, a veil, not to hide from us, but to stop us from looking in. And somewhere inside that room, the thing that watched back may still be waiting, not for a signal, not for a command, but for a repeat, for the door to open again. There's a file, half melted, poorly scanned, but real. Dated July 12, 1987. Recovered by a whistleblower who later vanished off a Greyhound route between Phoenix and Albuquerque. The file contains 2 pages from what appears to be a pre-operation risk assessment for GV. Stamped across the top, Joint Agency Advisory, Level Omega. The language inside is clinical, but what it suggests isn't. Phrases like cognitive interference field observed, exposure-induced dissociation beyond operable thresholds, and non-linguistic auditory payload confirmed during Phase 2 trials. There's one sentence that appears 3 separate times in bold, all caps. Observation is reciprocal. It's written like a warning. Not just that they were watching something, but that it could watch back, could choose to, or worse, needed to. Not long after that file's original date, a family of campers disappeared less than 5 miles from the restricted zone near Havasupai. The Bennetts, father, mother, 2 sons, were never found. Rangers discovered their campsite undisturbed. Food on the table, water still boiling in a kettle, no signs of struggle, no tracks leading away. Just one thing, their tent was zipped from the inside. A now-retired Arizona sheriff gave a private interview to a documentary crew in 1999. The footage was never released, but transcripts survive. He described what his deputies found scrawled in the dirt behind the Bennett site. One word, repeated 3 times, as if etched by a single fingertip. Mirror, 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 they brought in FBI agents the next day. All evidence was sealed. No further local investigation allowed. Years later, an amateur radio operator in New Mexico claimed he picked up a strange signal on an unused military band, precisely 77.4 MHz. The recording, played only once before being deleted from the ham community's archives, consisted of a woman's voice repeating a phrase every 12 seconds. "I never left. I just changed which me I am." The voice matched no known missing person, but spectrographic analysis, conducted by a freelance audio engineer who ran a blog about military interference patterns, found a secondary layer underneath the vocal tone, not an echo, a second voice, male, faint, speaking a language no one has yet identified. Then came the Van Nuys airport seizure, March 1996. A private plane arriving from Flagstaff was intercepted by federal marshals under unknown orders. The pilot and 2 passengers, names redacted, were placed under indefinite hold. The reason? They had attempted to bring an object across state lines, an object described by a leaked DHS Customs report as glass-like, liquid static in nature, emitting harmonic distortions when photographed. The report ends mid-sentence. In a blacked-out email string between DHS and an unnamed contract research group, one agent asks, "How can it be both a portal and a reflection?" The response is curt, chilling. "You're still assuming it was ever meant for us." More than anything, that line keeps coming back in unofficial discussions. The implication that the room, the operation, the object, it wasn't made here. Not that it was alien, but that it was misplaced, misused. Like a tool picked up by the wrong hands, switched on without the user manual, and every time it's accessed, the surrounding reality bends. Time contracts, memory gaps appear in the observers. Some have forgotten birthdays, others forget names. A field agent, according to the last preserved file from GV6, forgot his own mother, yet remembered the serial number of a wall panel inside the chamber that he swore he'd never seen. His quote, preserved in that report, reads, "It was like I remembered something I was never supposed to know, like I inherited someone else's dream." Another woman, a technician assigned to monitor vitals during subject exposure, developed aphasia and could only speak in palindromes for the rest of her life. Medical experts called it psychogenic, but her final recorded phrase, just days before her institutionalization, was unsettling. "Step on no pets. Stare not into mirrors you do not trust." That phrase later appeared, word for word, in graffiti at a vandalized FEMA site near Horseshoe Mesa in 2004. All signs point to a single truth. Operation Glass Veil was not an experiment. It was an encounter, but not with aliens. Not even with them. With ourselves. With a kind of echo that shouldn't echo. A chamber that remembers too much. And whatever was in that room, it didn't just look back. It learned. There's a grainy video. Just 8 seconds long. No audio. No metadata. It surfaced briefly on a now-defunct darknet forum in 2011 under the thread title, "GV Redlock Surveillance Feed Never Indexed." The footage shows a single room, plain, concrete, windowless. In the center, a rectangular black panel stands upright, unsupported. It's roughly the size of a door but has no frame, no hinges, no visible back. Just a void. In front of it, a man stands completely still, clad in what appears to be civilian clothing. His arms hang limp at his sides, and his mouth is slightly open. At exactly the 7-second mark, his body jerks, not from the knees or the waist, but from the shoulders, like something behind him pulled a string. He steps forward, disappears into the black, and is gone. The panel doesn't ripple. It doesn't move. But in the final second of the video, something presses against the inside. Not a person. A hand. Pale. too long, and it taps 3 times on the glass. No official agency acknowledged the clip. Within hours, the forum was deleted, and a series of cease and desist orders were issued from shell firms linked to defense contractors. The uploader's IP was traced to a motel in Page, Arizona. The room was empty when police arrived. The bed was made. The faucet was running. The mirror had been removed from the wall. Mirrors again. Every record tied to Operation Glass Veil that survives does so accidentally. Misfiled hard copies, botched deletions, backup caches that slipped the purge. One such document, partially restored from a corrupted CD-ROM found at a government surplus auction, lists the names of 13 individuals. The heading reads, Phase 3 Exposure Survivors. Of the 13, 6 were later declared legally dead despite no bodies being found. 3 were committed to psychiatric facilities. 1 vanished after publicly claiming he no longer had a reflection. And another, Dr. Yelena Gurevich, was interviewed in a shortwave radio broadcast in 2005, claiming she had looked behind the veil. Her voice on the recording is calm, deliberate, almost too calm. It's not glass. That's what they got wrong. It's not a veil either. It's more like a hole made of memory. When you stand in front of it, you feel yourself thinning, like you're forgetting the parts of you that were never really yours to begin with. The radio station burned down 2 weeks later. The official explanation was faulty wiring, but in an off-the-record chat with an independent fire inspector, he claimed the source of the ignition was an implosion, not an explosion. He'd never seen anything like it. Every time someone gets close to what Glass Veil was or still is, something intervenes. Accidents, fires, sudden retractions. But the most disturbing pattern is not who disappears. It's what they leave behind. Take the case of Agent Devin Marrow, assigned to a civilian oversight role in 1989 during the cleanup phase of OPGV. Marrow's notes were recovered by his sister after his suicide in 1994. The notebook, now in the possession of an anonymous collector, contains a series of increasingly erratic entries. June 12th. They showed me a picture of myself I never took. June 15th. The wall in the chamber isn't glass, it's absence. The absence of everything we know. June 18th. I watched a man walk into it and forget his own name before his second step. June 23rd. I am not Devin Marrow. I just look like he used to. The notebook ends abruptly. The last page is blank except for one sentence, written upside down in the corner. Who keeps watching when all the lights go out? In 2010, a former National Park employee anonymously submitted a Freedom of Information Act request titled GV Object Displacement Incident, September 1990. It was rejected with the note, "No such record exists." However, that same year, hikers near Lipan Point reported finding a 3-foot depression in the earth shaped like a rectangle, with melted tree roots surrounding the perimeter. One of them claimed her dog refused to step near it, growled at nothing for 10 minutes, then bolted into the woods and was never seen again. She also reported nosebleeds, vivid nightmares, and in one instance, hearing her own voice coming from her radio, except it was describing a place she'd never been. And throughout all these events, official channels remained silent. No press releases, no investigations. Only the occasional audit note, the scattered file that escaped deletion, the unmarked black SUV parked too long across the street. Glass Veil isn't just a forgotten operation. It's a scar, one that reopens every time someone gets too close. And as the reports pile up, doubles, memory lapses, silent rooms in the desert, the question stops being what was Operation Glass Veil? It becomes, how many of us are still inside it? The calls started again in 2013. Dispatchers in Coconino County began receiving late-night emergency reports from hikers who claimed they were being followed by themselves, not metaphorically, not delusionally. They described seeing exact replicas of themselves at a distance, standing at the tree line or emerging from shadows. Same backpack, same clothes, same watch, silent, motionless. Always just far enough to blur the details, but close enough to be unmistakable. One ranger wrote in an internal incident report, "Woman in distress said she looked through her binoculars and saw herself, staring back, with an expression she swore she wasn't making." The report ended with a strange postscript. Note: interviewed the woman at the station, asked her to draw what she saw. She did, but used her left hand. She's right-handed. Her actual drawing was collected by the Department of Interior the next day. A few months later, an unmarked white box arrived at the Flagstaff Historical Archive. Inside were 7 Polaroids, each showing a narrow canyon-like corridor cut deep into the red rock. The 7th image was different, blurry, off-center. It showed a human silhouette standing between 2 sheer stone walls, but the figure cast no shadow, no return address. The curator who opened the package said there was no postage, no tracking number, only a post-it note stuck to the top. "You left part of it open." There's no record of who sent the box, but in a coincidental twist, or perhaps a deliberate one, the same day it arrived, seismic sensors in the Kaibab Plateau registered a deep-frequency tremor. Not an earthquake, not plate movement. A single vibration, too low to hear, but strong enough to register for 4 full minutes. Then came the lake. In early 2014, a seasonal lake known only to locals, Lake Ashland, dried up overnight. No storm, no runoff, just gone. A basin of cracked mud and dead fish. At the center was a sinkhole, roughly 7 feet in diameter. Rangers placed a motion camera nearby, hoping to catch signs of geological activity. What they captured instead was impossible. On the footage, time-stamped 03:13 a.m., a figure emerges from the hole. It's not climbing, it's standing up, rising in a slow, unnatural movement like a puppet on a slow string. The figure is humanoid, naked, with skin that appears to shimmer like liquid. Its face is smooth, featureless, no eyes, no mouth, no hair. Then it turns to face the camera, and for exactly 2 seconds, its skin ripples and a human face appears across its surface. The face is terrified. Experts who reviewed the footage before it disappeared from internal archives disagreed on its authenticity. Some claimed it was a hoax, a glitch, but those who were there when it played described the same visceral reaction: nausea, shortness of breath, in 2 cases, uncontrollable sobbing. The motion camera was later reported as lost in transit, but an anonymous Park Service employee kept a personal copy. He shared a frame with an independent researcher before going silent. That researcher? He later wrote a paper, never published, entitled "Reflections That Don't Reflect: Non-Reciprocal Phenomena in Optical Null Zones." In his introduction, he described standing near the dry lake and seeing his own reflection cast in the water that wasn't there. The passage reads, "I saw myself clearly, but I wasn't mimicking my posture. I was smiling. I wasn't." By now, Glass Veil had become more than an erased project. It had become a pattern, a ripple, one that was leaking. In an internal NSA document flagged in a massive 2015 whistleblower dump, a strange phrase was buried among technical reports about data breaches and communication anomalies. It reads, "Repeat fluctuation event, Grand Canyon sector 0313 UTC. Visual bleed confirmed. Sentient overlap suspected. No explanation, no follow-up." Later that year, a group of college students attempting an unsanctioned hike into a restricted area near Horseshoe Mesa went missing. They had documented their trek on a social media account, videos, photos, GPS coordinates. Everything stopped abruptly. Authorities conducted a week-long search, nothing found. But a phone, belonging to one of the hikers, was later discovered in a creek bed 12 miles from their last known location. Its data was wiped, except for one photo stored deep in the memory cache. The image is black at first glance, but brightening it reveals a room. Concrete. Blank. In the center, a black rectangle. Not a door, not a screen, a surface. And in the reflection of the flash, something that wasn't in the room. A face, smiling. The phone was turned over to federal agents within days. The family was told it had been destroyed in analysis. More and more, it became clear. Glass veil was not an event. It was a wound, a break in the skin of perception, and we kept picking at it. All the cover-ups, the destroyed files, the erased people, they weren't just about hiding something. They were about trying to put something back inside, and failing. There's a stretch of land east of Shiva Temple, inside the Grand Canyon's remotest sectors, where even modern cartography gets things wrong. Satellite data regularly shifts by up to 30 meters. GPS signals distort, compasses spin slowly, surveyor drones return corrupted footage or not at all. Locals refer to the area by an older name, Whisper Point. But within the sealed communications of Operation Glass Veil, it had another label, Site Theta. The oldest record of Site Theta comes not from government files, but from a 1911 geological journal archived at Yale. In a marginal note beside a sketch of the canyon's topography, the geologist scrawled something odd. Ridge appears to cast no morning shadow despite light angle. Might revisit. Felt wrong. Fast forward to 1988. A Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, DARPA, team is dropped via chopper into the area to install temporary acoustic measurement equipment. Internal memo confirms they never activated the beacons. All data ceased 4 hours after boots on ground. The helicopter pilot, in his official statement, reported that the team called out at U3:13 local time, the same minute as the unexplained tremor from the lake incident decades later. He swore he saw one of the scientists waving, but said her body cast a shadow in the wrong direction. Her name was Dr. Evelyn Choi. Her personnel file, partially redacted, lists her area of expertise as symmetrical anomalies in nested environments. Before joining DARPA, she'd studied mirror neurons and liminal cognition. After Theta, she was never seen again. That same year, a different team, this time from an unnamed contractor, was sent in. Their mission was to install a mobile observation chamber, a reinforced enclosure constructed around the central structure. The blueprints, recovered in 2016 from a storage auction, show a 10-10-meter box of concrete and synthetic polymers centered on what is labeled Object C, internal reflective plane, non-tactile, non-rigid. The margins include notations that seem less like engineering notes and more like warnings. Do not place objects in front of plane. Do not break line of sight once interaction begins. Do not enter with mirrors, lenses, or recording devices. In spite of these, someone did. The access logs refer to a test subject, codename Nova 6, identity unknown, entered the chamber at 02:51. Heart rate and brain activity initially normal, but after 6 minutes, all vitals began fluctuating violently. At minute 9, the visual feed, described in surviving logs, shows Nova 6 stopping mid-motion, then mimicking a gesture the observers hadn't seen him make yet, as if he were rehearsing something from his own future. At minute 12, the video cuts to static. One technician, who later left the program under classified medical discharge, claimed the static wasn't noise, but a pattern of repeating human eyes, thousands of them, looking back. Nova 6 was never recovered. The next morning, The chamber's inner walls were covered in handprints, dozens of them, all identical, all belonging to the subject, but arranged in spiraling configurations that forensic analysts said could not have been placed by a human without multiple dislocated joints. Another print was found on the outside of the chamber, pressed deep into the polymer wall. It was backwards. In the years that followed, the records grew less frequent, more fractured. An uptick in interference events began appearing in areas miles beyond Site Theta. Reports of waking dreams, where entire ranger teams would pause for hours with no memory of the lapse. Patrol logs showing personnel returning early but swearing they hadn't left yet. One man claimed he'd watched his own convoy enter the station gate from the opposite side. Then came the blackouts. Short, localized bursts, streetlights flickering across Flagstaff for exactly 13 seconds, all at once. Digital clocks resetting to 0313. Surveillance footage corrupted only during those moments. It happened 7 times between 2015 and 2017. No explanation from the power grid, no coverage in the media. But in an internal FBI memo, someone finally asked, "Is this spillage?" By then, the phrase glass veil was no longer used in official channels. It had been renamed, recoded. The new designation was filed under an innocuous-sounding directive, Operation Hollow Trace. But the reports didn't stop. A former NSA linguist began collecting them, a rogue effort to document every instance of what she called cognitive reflections. Her research, partially leaked through a defunct subdomain, includes hundreds of first-hand accounts. A woman who dreamed of a conversation, only to have it happen word for word with a stranger weeks later. A child who asked his mother why she had 2 faces. A man who said every mirror in his house showed him 10 seconds behind reality. And one line, found scrawled across a page in her final notebook before she vanished. If we keep looking through the veil, something's going to look back long enough to remember how to come through. It's not a myth. It's not a metaphor. It's an opening, and no one knows how wide it is now. In 2018, a low-level data analyst working a night shift at the Department of Energy flagged a routine anomaly. A diagnostic script designed to monitor fluctuations in magnetic field patterns across federal installations logged a spike in Sector 12B, Kaibab Plateau. The intensity was off the scale, a concentrated electromagnetic burst lasting 4.7 seconds with a central frequency that matched nothing in the database. The signature was later traced to an abandoned communications relay, one supposedly decommissioned in 1994. When a maintenance team was dispatched to verify the coordinates, they found no relay. Only a perfectly circular patch of scorched vegetation, 17 feet in diameter. Soil samples taken from the perimeter showed molecular distortion in the root structure, twisting, splitting, as if the plant matter had attempted to replicate itself and failed. The case was closed under geothermal event. The analyst was transferred, but not before he copied the original signal burst. That copy, eventually leaked to a fringe researcher, was run through spectral analysis. The waveform, when visualized, resembled a human face, symmetrical, ambiguous, frozen mid-scream. It gets worse. The same year, a contractor at Sandia National Laboratories filed an internal complaint about an off-site meeting regarding anomalous containment policy. He claimed that during a classified briefing, he was shown a video that, according to his written affidavit, wasn't a recording, but a live feed from a room that does not exist. The room was sealed in black, featureless, and in its center stood the glass veil, or something like it. He wrote, "I couldn't move while watching it, couldn't breathe. The black surface flickered, and I saw my own face, but it blinked before I did." He was placed on leave the following day. 3 weeks later, he was found dead in his home. The mirror in his bathroom had been shattered from the inside. All throughout 2019, a cluster of disappearances rippled outward from Arizona. Rangers, researchers, transient hikers, always one at a time. No violence, no struggle, just vanished. Their names would appear on lost persons lists for a while, then disappear from those as well, as if someone kept editing the record of who was ever there. But the most disturbing disappearance wasn't a person, it was a room. At a secure storage facility in Utah, used for low-level interagency archiving, a sub-basement level labeled B3 simply stopped existing. Employees who'd worked there for years swore it had always been there. Storage room 14B, the long hallway with the humming light. But when investigators went in, they found no door, no corridor, nothing but a blank concrete wall. Yet the cameras still showed people walking into it, vanishing into thin air. A tech team tried to analyze the footage, but every time the recording approached 03:13 a.m., it cut to black, as if something refused to be seen. The walls themselves began to whisper. Maintenance workers reported strange acoustic echoes, a voice speaking backward from inside the walls, repeating their names. One janitor filed a formal complaint stating he heard a voice say, "This version of you ends soon." He never came back for his final paycheck. That same month, a FOIA request was submitted to the National Archives for documents relating to Operation Glass Veil, Project Seraphim, and Site Theta. The response was standard: no such records. But the envelope arrived torn, and tucked inside, unnoticed by whoever sealed it, was a single page, typed in an older Courier font. No header, no signature. Line by line it read, "The room isn't a room, it's a fold. A trap designed to collapse inward, trapping something that thinks in mirrors. The longer it's remembered, the thinner the fold becomes. Stop saying its name. Stop recording the hour. If it knocks, don't answer." Those last words weren't typed. They were written in smudged graphite, as if added in haste. And below them, one final sentence, scribbled in trembling ink: "You're not the first version of yourself to read this." This wasn't just containment, it was recursion. Whatever was on the other side of the glass veil wasn't static, it was adaptive, learning, rewriting. Not just what we saw, but how we remembered seeing it, warping timelines, bending identities, consuming the records and the witnesses alike. By 2020, rumors began spreading of a locked server hidden deep in a Cold War-era vault in Langley, one with no administrative access, no password recovery. Its only designation, Mirror Box. Some say the last surviving footage from Glass Veil is inside. Some say it's already been watched, and that whoever watched it was never seen again, at least not as themselves. In 2021, a military contractor known only by the internal code Hemlock 4 published a confidential white paper on cognitive event horizons, thresholds beyond which perception collapses inward, rendering the observer unreliable. The document was never meant for public view, but a single page leaked via a hacked satellite node in Reykjavik, Iceland. That page contained only two elements: a graph with no axis labels showing a perfect exponential curve, and a short paragraph that read, "Subject observation of the entity designated GLVC results in mimetic bleed within 72 hours. Identity fracturing occurs along pre-existing psychological stress lines. Confirmed symptoms: mirror aversion, syntactic instability, recursion hallucinations, and temporal inversion. We strongly advise physical destruction of all access points. Failing that, we must burn the witnesses." 2 days after this fragment surfaced, the Reykjavik servers were physically destroyed, not hacked, not reformatted, melted. The core theory of the paper was simple but horrifying. The veil wasn't just a structure, it was a behavior. an idea that could take root, spread, echo, and it had already begun doing so. That same year, a DC-based psychiatrist, Dr. Kent Oliviero, reported a sudden uptick in patients suffering from a rare, undocumented syndrome. Each claimed to be misaligned with their own bodies. One patient described, "living 5 seconds behind myself." Another claimed he could see his own face from across the room during sleep. Several referenced a door without edges or a mirror that remembers me wrong. When Dr. Oliviero attempted to cross-reference symptoms, he found every one of their medical records had been digitally redacted, entire identities scrambled, not deleted, just altered, like the system no longer recognized who they had been. His final note, saved to a flash drive later discovered in his desk after he went missing, simply read, "I think I'm dreaming someone else's life." Meanwhile, in Nevada's Black Rock Desert, a group of amateur astronomers reported a strange flash in the southern sky, visible for less than 1 second. No known satellites, flares, or atmospheric events matched the phenomenon. But triangulation placed the epicenter at an old sealed facility previously linked to Glass Veil's logistical operations, Cinder Vault 9. When a drone was sent to investigate, it captured footage of a large rectangular impression in the sand, nearly identical in dimensions to the original Glass Veil chamber, and in the center, a shadow. No object, no figure, just a void where light refused to enter. The footage cut off at exactly 03:13 a.m. Every time that number reappeared, something followed, and people were beginning to notice. Civilian accounts exploded online, strangers sharing eerily similar stories from across the country. Black doorways where there should be none, reflections that don't sync, dreams of walking endlessly through rooms with no corners. In one viral post, a woman shared a video of her bathroom mirror fogging up without steam, slowly revealing a message: "You're on the wrong side." The mirror was shattered the next morning. Her account was deleted. By 2022, a hidden subreddit emerged, populated by whistleblowers, tech contractors, and ex-defense staff, all trading stories of Veil artifacts, flash drives that erase themselves, voices in white noise, fractured digital memories. A user named Shard37 claimed to have recovered partial voice logs from a field op in 1993, codenamed Delphi Echo. The audio was warped, degraded, but the final exchange was chilling. Subject stepped through. "Still tracking vitals?" "Yes, but they're increasing, like he's becoming more than one. Seal the room, now." The logs ended with static, then one whispered phrase, not from any operator: "Let me try again." The suggestion that the entity, or entities, could repeat, retry, clone itself across minds and moments shattered the last illusion that Glass Veil was under control, and still, no agency spoke, no press release, no inquiry, only erasures. But erasures leave scars. In 2023, a federal archivist reviewing microfilm from 1986 discovered a single frame out of sequence. The reel showed a routine environmental report until one slide, which depicted a shadowed room with a black shape in the center. Written along the bottom in reverse typewriter ink, "We closed it, but it opened in us." The archivist never reported the find. Instead, she mailed the reel to her sister, along with a short letter: "I don't think I'm me anymore. If I forget your name, don't remind me." The story never made the news, but pieces of it survive, scattered, unverified, whispered across systems and servers. The room, the object, the project. None of them are where they were, because the veil moved, and if it moved once, it can do it again. Not just through space, but through us. There's an encrypted folder, passed through darknet hubs like a contagion. No origin, no metadata. Just the title: Veil. Echo Protocol. Inside are dozens of corrupted video frames, scrambled text documents, audio clips that sound like breathing played backward, and one clean file, a single image. It shows a group of men in hazmat suits standing in a barren room. No windows, no light source. In the center, the familiar monolith. Tall, black, impossibly smooth. But this version, it's cracked. Hairline fractures spider across its surface, glowing faintly with something deep and sickly white. A caption, burned into the lower corner, reads, Stage 5, Inversion imminent. All versions compromised. No one knows where the photo was taken, no timestamp, no geotag. But matching architectural elements suggest an underground site, possibly Cinder Vault 9 or a related chamber. And then came the children. In late 2023, pediatric therapists across the Southwest began reporting a bizarre trend. Young children, ages 4 to 7, began drawing identical scenes, a room with no doors, no ceiling, and a mirror that had hands. Not reflected hands, real ones, reaching through. Parents described sudden changes in behavior. Kids speaking in reverse syntax, calling their own names out loud, then reacting to it as if someone else had spoken. One child woke up screaming, "It climbed out of my face." The drawings were collected by child psychologists and quietly submitted to a university research group. 3 weeks later, the entire study was terminated under sealed order. The lead researcher moved overseas. All notes vanished, and then someone tried to stop the echoes. An independent security contractor, known only by the alias Blackwell, posted a message on a defunct ham radio forum. He claimed he'd worked on what he called a scramble node, a device designed to jam non-local signatures emitted by residual glass veil sites. He said it wasn't perfect, but it could muffle the bleed. He offered to build more, share blueprints, coordinate a signal web. 2 days later, Blackwell posted again. But this time, the message was different. No introduction, no signature, just this. He never existed. Stop asking. His account was disabled minutes later, but multiple users saved the post, and one noticed something strange. The phrase had embedded timecode data in its binary. When decoded, it mapped to a precise date and time. March 13, 2024, or 03:13 a.m. The exact moment to the second that surveillance footage across multiple national park stations went black. Again, no explanation. Power grids unaffected, cloud backups corrupted. When the systems came back online, they all showed the same glitch. A single frame inserted into every camera feed. It was a black rectangle, not a door, not a wall. Just space where nothing belonged. And in that nothing, 2 faint lights. Not eyes exactly, but aligned where eyes should be. One technician enhanced the image and made a chilling observation. The eyes perfectly matched the spatial positioning of whoever had last viewed the screen, as if it had been watching them watching it. The notion of reciprocal observation wasn't new, but this was different. This was mimetic entanglement. Some now believe the original glass veil wasn't a breach. It was a beacon, a call, a request for access. And our mistake wasn't that we opened it, it's that we let it learn what we are, how we think, how we mirror. Since then, sightings have increased. People standing still for hours in public, unblinking. Identical strangers appearing in security footage taken miles apart. Voices on the phone that sound like yours, but say things you don't remember saying. In some cases, individuals begin referring to themselves in plural. I forgot where we ended. I don't know which me is driving today. I looked in the mirror and saw the moment I died. I haven't gotten there yet. Hospitals don't report these cases. They're reclassified under mental health anomalies and funneled into shadow care facilities, places without records. places where, rumor has it, mirrors are banned entirely, and in the deepest layers of federal networks, where the glass veil was born, an auto-triggered protocol now watches for any mention of a 3.13 mirror recursion or the phrase "I saw myself first." When triggered, those entries are purged, not flagged, not reviewed, just deleted, because at some point, even the people in charge realize something terrifying. The veil doesn't need a doorway anymore. It only needs attention. And we've already given it too much. In early 2024, an unmarked package arrived at the Arizona Historical Preservation Office. No return address. Inside, a 1980s reel-to-reel tape recorder, a faded FBI badge, and a worn leather notebook that smelled faintly of burnt plastic. The recorder was functional. The tape inside, unspooled slightly, had a label. GV Witness Era 1 GEAR Final Log. The audio was faint, distorted, but it began with a man's voice, raspy, exhausted, speaking as if he'd already said it too many times. "I'm recording this because I don't remember what's real anymore. I've read my own handwriting in notes I don't recall writing. I've seen my own face blink before I do. The veil isn't a place, it's a decision. And I think we made the wrong one." Then silence. A hiss, like static crawling through sand. Then, "They told us we were containing it. They lied. We were feeding it." Click. End of tape. The notebook offered no further answers, just fragments. Phrases scratched deep into the paper, over and over, tearing pages. "We opened it with memory. Don't look at reflections after 3. The first me is still inside. You are the last version they'll tolerate." Every page after that was blank. That same month, an observatory in Flagstaff logged a pattern in cosmic background radiation that appeared to mirror recent geomagnetic shifts on Earth. Not similar, mirrored. As if something was syncing with us, echoing our environment back at us with a delay. A physicist who reviewed the data suggested, half-jokingly, that the universe itself was reflecting, that somewhere, somehow, we had spawned a second version of our world, folded into the gaps we forgot. No one laughed, because beneath the equations, a different kind of terror took shape. Not invasion, not corruption, not possession. Replacement. As far back as 1985, buried in a redacted naval intelligence memo, the phrase "identity override vectors" appeared. No context, but by now it's clear. Some who came into contact with the glass veil never returned. Something did. Something that wore their voice, used their name, knew how to walk their path, kiss their spouse, open their front door, but they forgot small things. The date of their wedding, their child's eye color, the name of a pet that never existed. And when confronted, they didn't panic. They smiled. One man, confronted by his brother after a sudden change in demeanor, simply said, "I remember being him. I also remember being the one who took his place." And then he asked, "Does it matter which of us wants to stay?" It does, or at least it used to. But now we're running out of differences, out of boundaries. The more we speak its name, the more we write it, study it, trace it, the more open it becomes. You've seen the signs. The number 313, the phrase "mirror bleed," the dreams where you wake up in the wrong room, where someone stands in the corner with your eyes, where your reflection keeps breathing after you stop. The final report, recovered from a forgotten drive labeled GV Exit, contains only this: project status, uncontained. Site Theta, fractured. Memetic cascade, in progress. Recommended action, memory erasure, protocol, null versioning. And handwritten beneath it, in pencil, shaky, rushed. We are all the final witness now. There is no ending, no final statement. Because Glass Veil was never about discovery. It was about what happens when a civilization stares too long into its own reflection and sees something staring back that prefers its side of the story. So if tonight you glance into your window and see your silhouette, and if it smiles before you do, or knocks, or tilts its head, or mouths your name, don't respond. Don't mirror it. Don't blink. Because that's when the switch happens. That's when the version of you that belongs here disappears, and the one that doesn't steps in.